it for YouTube to really decide whether it's in the right mood to live stream or not. But there we are. We are here. We are live. How are we all doing? It's been a couple of weeks since Miami. Formula One sphere, no big news. No big news in that time, apart from, Alpine falling apart, Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton not really having a nice time. It's all happening. Hello, Eville. How are you doing? You are indeed first. Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello. Josh's in the chat as well. Timothy, how are we doing? Where shall we begin? Although we are here at Imola, there's been a lot of news stories to touch upon before we get into the qualifying sessions themselves. Where do we start, really? Max Verstappen breaking the record at the Nordschleife. Alpine doing very Alpine things, or Ferrari still not looking like they're amazing, or the fact that lots of teams have brought upgrades to this weekend and the few teams that we need to be looking out for going into this qualifying session, because it might be a bit of a shake-up to the order that we've had previously, give or take a few drivers here or there. Alpine being Alpine, says Josh. Yeah. It's one of those ridiculous one. Who's taking pole? I think it could be a little bit of a mix. I'd be silly not to say one of the two McLaren cars at this point, considering what we've seen in the free practice sessions, but you never know. Hello, Claude. How's it going? Hello, Varun. London is red. Hello there. Watching the I was going to say Champions League final, then FA Cup final later on today. Ferrari got fined for tyres. Yeah, well, Ferrari are just doing very Ferrari things. Like, if you've watched any of the free practice sessions, you'll know that Lewis Hamilton was having an awful time this weekend. Like, really, really was not having a fun time at all. Let me just click this and click that. There we go. We are live and ready and raring to go. Hello, Sarah. How are you? It's been a couple of weeks. Wouldn't be surprised if Verstappen takes pole. He does look all right, doesn't he? Considering, again, in free practice 1, free practice 2, that Red Bull looked really difficult to control. Saw the rear end of it stepping out quite a bit. But free practice 3, something to get it together. And it's very Max Verstappen, isn't it? Max Verstappen does just seem to be able to turn up when he needs to. Don't rub salt to my wound. Apologies. Hello, Sally. How are you doing? Ferrari Hopium taking my solid. Should we start there? Because Lewis Hamilton, been talked about a lot recently, has been in the press once again talking about his start of life at Ferrari. He was very quick to sort of say, let's judge my Ferrari career at the end of it. We're only 6 races in. And he thinks he's going to be at Ferrari for a good few seasons. I think he even said sort of 2, 3, 4 seasons time is when he'd like to reflect on his Ferrari career and kind of judge his Ferrari career, if you will. But, when you're a 7-time world champion and you're the most decorated Formula One driver on the Formula One grid ever, you are going to have people talk about you as things are happening. And outside of that really, really exciting win for the sprint race in China, it has just felt like Lewis Hamilton is miles off of it and nowhere near where we expected him to be coming into this season. But then the Ferrari car hasn't really been where it's needed to be. Hamilton sitting bottom of that top 7, closer to Alex Albon than he is his teammate. And for me, when it comes to Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, it just felt like this season, I was going to say it, this season felt like it was going to be their season. It really did feel like coming into this year, it was going to be all about Ferrari, whether or not they could take the fight to McLaren. McLaren I still thought would have the better overall package, considering their form over the course of last year. But you look at sort of post-Monza, or even the few races prior to Monza, and the fact that Charles Leclerc was in the mix to win in Azerbaijan, the fact that he did go on to win in Monza, Carlos Sainz picked up a win in Mexico. And you're sort of looking at those races and you're going, okay, Ferrari are really starting to put a package together here. Ferrari are really starting to look like they've got the pace to actually be championship contenders. But it just all fell apart as soon as we got into the season, didn't it? It really didn't come to fruition. Charles Leclerc was frustrated. I think we all expected Charles Leclerc to be the number one, at least for this season. Lewis Hamilton would have said otherwise, but I think that was the general consensus. Now we're moving into this season. As I say, we're a quarter of the way through the season, and they feel like they're way too far off for a championship battle at this point. You look at Oscar Piastri on 131 points, more points than Ferrari have combined at this point, with 94 in the Constructors' Championship. So Ferrari and Ferrari fans, I just feel a little bit sorry for. I really do, because I just don't know what more you can do. You're looking at last year, everything's going in the right direction. You're bringing in the best Formula One driver there has ever been, statistically. Next century is their century. Yeah, it does feel like, when will it be the Ferrari year that we're actually hoping for? And it's going to be so strange and so awkward, I think, for Lewis Hamilton up until the point where, he needs to get a win under his belt. And I made a video about this earlier on in the year, sort of what could be considered a good first season for Lewis Hamilton, and what people kind of expected from that first season with Lewis Hamilton. And I broke it down into 7 tiers and 7 kind of things that he needs to tick off throughout this 2025 campaign. You could argue that actually a few of them were starting to come true with that sprint race win in China. But it's been torrid since then. And actually, some of the things that I thought maybe he'd started to be ticking off the list, like getting underneath the car and understanding how Ferrari worked and the philosophy behind the scenes. Now I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that was just a one-off and he really doesn't quite understand those things at all as of yet. Football is a weird sport. Yeah, very weird sport. But that's the Ferrari side of things. Shall we talk Alpine as well? Because I'm seeing a few bits in the chat now coming in about Franco Colapinto and the Alpine setup. Before we get into Franco Colapinto, I think, we have to start at the top of the rankings almost at Alpine. We have to start with Ollie Oakes. I thought was a kind of real good fit for the Alpine team finally. They'd gone through team principal after team principal. Was it now 5 people in the last 4 years have now taken the reins at Alpine? Like, he didn't even get to the summer break, which is normally where they make their change. That's when Bruno Famin stepped aside and sort of moved over to the engine side, or back to the engine side of things, and allowed Ollie Oakes to take his spot last season. Then the year before that, it was Otmar, of course, and it does feel like Alpine just chugged through team principals. I think the annoying thing for Alpine is they keep changing their team principal throughout the season. So it's not like they bring in a new team principal and they have, a winter break to bed in. Ollie Oakes came in the summer break. To be fair, what you could argue is a pretty good second half of the season. I think that was bolstered by the fact that Alpine brought in David Sanchez. I think that was a very, very good pickup from the Alpine setup behind the scenes in terms of the aero. But it's all just fallen apart again, hasn't it? This is slightly different. The Alpine higher-ups at least didn't get rid of Ollie Oakes. Ollie Oakes left seemingly of his own accord, something possibly relating to what's going on with his brother. His brother, of course, was running high tech whilst Ollie Oakes was team principal at Alpine. So it might be something to do with that. I'd imagine Ollie Oakes is going to have to go back and try and sort out the mess that high tech has become in his absence over the last sort of 6 to 8 months or so. But yeah, it's all a little bit strange. What actually happened? The team principal brother was doing dodgy stuff. Yeah, so their team, Ollie Oakes' brother, William Oakes, I want to say his name is, was arrested 3 days prior or 2 days prior to Ollie Oakes then resigning from the role. They were, as brothers, both owners of High Tech, which was Ollie Oakes' team, and the team that he came from, stepping up into being team principal of Alpine. Before that, he was team principal at High Tech. Hence why Paul Aaron is one of the Alpine reserve drivers, for instance. That was an Ollie Oakes bring-in because he was a High Tech driver. And as I say, his brother then got sent to prison. Ollie Oaks then probably dealing with quite a lot of personal issues alongside with financial issues because his brother was helping him to run High Tech, and High Tech was their joint venture. Had to step aside from Alpine duties by the sounds of things. That then opened the door, and it doesn't help that Flavio Briatore was already putting pressure on Ollie Oaks to change to Franco Colapinto. And then I think, you get to the point where you're Ollie Oaks, you're trying to run this Alpine team that has people above you who are trying to make decisions which should be your choice. Like Ollie Oaks as team principal should really be the man picking the drivers in the team. If you want that to be the philosophy that generally seems to be the best, you know what I mean? You look at the teams that have their team principal, and their team principal is kind of the heart of it. They're generally the teams that do start to produce better cars, better talent, start to do better overall in the sport. So Ollie Oaks had that pressure from Flavio Briatore anyway. Flavio Briatore wanted to get Franco Colapinto in. Jack Doohan was sort of Ollie Oaks's pick, and Ollie Oaks, I think, wanted to stick with Jack Doohan at least until the summer break. That's what we've been told throughout the season so far, that he wanted to stick with Jack Doohan and give Jack Doohan at least half a season up until the summer break before any kind of decisions were made on that. But then the personal issues happen, and as I say, when you've got that problem at home, you have to step aside. And I think High Tech has to be more of his, he owns High Tech, whereas he's an employee at Alpine. So you kind of choose between the two of those. He probably cares a lot more about High Tech and the situation that's going on there with his brother than he does about Alpine having their fifth team principal in however long. The other thing I did want to get your guys' opinion on is the fact that Flavio Briatore taking that role is quite a controversial one. I know that he had his lifetime ban overturned. How you have a lifetime ban overturned, you'll have to sort of excuse me, I don't really know. But he had a lifetime ban overturned, so he can now come back into Formula One, which is how he got back into Formula One last year with Alpine anyway. But I think it's very different, Flavio Briatore having a, behind the scenes role, we barely ever see him kind of thing, to now actually being a team principal once again after what he did. Like, he's literally kicked out of the sport because he was cheating. And it's like, how do you get that overturned, one? And then secondly, how do Formula One just allow you to come back in? And they're just like, yeah, sure, no problem at all. Just come back in. Absolutely weird. If you don't know, Flavio Briatore, he was the man behind Crashgate, which was back in 2008, where Lewis Hamilton won the championship, Felipe Massa came second. That's the year, isn't it? In Singapore, Flavio Briatore basically told one of his drivers to crash intentionally so that Fernando Alonso could win that race in Singapore. Came out after the fact. It was completely and utterly rigged, and they'd effectively, forced that race victory for Fernando Alonso for financial reasons. They needed a win that season. They saw the opportunity to get that win by effectively cheating, asking one of your drivers to crash and cause a safety car intentionally. And therefore, all of the people involved in that and all of the people that knew about it at least were given a lifetime ban from the sport. That lifetime ban seems to just run out after 16, 17 years if you are Flavio Briatore. So now he is back in, and he is taking the team principal role for Alpine for the rest of the season. And personally, I think it's just one of the most ridiculous things that Formula One could have done for itself. You're taking literally a person who is known for cheating, a person who cheated themselves to a victory, and completely sort of took away a lot of the validity of that championship. Like, Felipe Massa to this day still believes, he should be rightfully the 2008 Drivers' World Champion, because it did go down to the line. I know Hamilton did come fifth in Brazil and Massa lost on points, and that kind of happened after the fact, but that Singapore result does affect the championship as well. So it's all such a weird kind of background to that championship victory in 2008, and not for Lewis Hamilton or Felipe Massa's fault, for Flavio Briatore's fault. And now he is allowed to come back in. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, Felipe Massa is or has sued Formula One a fair few times, I think, over the course of the years, for all of the money that he'd missed out on. Obviously, not being a Formula One world champion comes with a lot of benefits. You earn a lot of money for being the Formula One world champion, not just through winning the championship itself and getting paid out by your team, but also through sponsorships and branding. You know, Felipe Massa was a Brazilian Formula One world champion. You can imagine how lucrative that would be. And Felipe Massa rightfully has kind of claimed that in the past, in my opinion. And I think, you know, looking at Singapore, he does have a sort of a leg to stand on in that fight, does Felipe. However, moving on to that Ollie Oaks change and the fact that Ollie Oaks then moved aside did then mean, oh no, I know he didn't lose it in Singapore. I'm not saying it's just down to that race, William. Like, I completely appreciate it's across an entire season. But if you're Felipe Massa, you'd argue that point, wouldn't you? You definitely use that to your advantage when you're trying to argue your position in court and getting yourself a few extra million sort of dollars. Is it dollars in Brazil? Not really sure. A few extra dollars every single sort of year or two when you can. So yeah, of course it's over the whole season. But as I was saying, that then leads into Alpine itself, and the fact that Jack Doohan, because he was kind of wanted by Ollie Oaks slightly more, now that Ollie Oaks was out of the picture, and it felt like Flavio Briatore was already pushing the fact that he wanted Colapinto to come in sooner rather than later anyway. I think if it would have been down to Flavio Briatore and Ollie Oaks hadn't have been the team principal at the start of the year, say that like all this high-tech stuff happened in December and Ollie Oaks moved aside in January, I don't think we'd have seen Jack Doohan at all this year. I think Franco Colapinto would have gone straight into that Alpine seat, straight off the line. So it's one of those things. Love that every time the race, I forget there's one. Every time a stream pops up, reminds me. Well, that's good. I'm glad I can remind you when the races are. We have got a triple header. This is the first of a triple header and the first of 5 races for Franco Colapinto. So let's talk about Franco. I do understand why Alpine want him in. You know, he showed a lot of good racing last year when he was at Williams. He did a really good job for the Williams team. So I can completely understand the decision to try and get him in. Is he going to do any better than Jack Doohan has done in the first 6 races of the season? I think it's going to be really tough because I think it's so competitive inside of that midfield. And, you know, you can see right here, Albon has been like the standout with 30 points, but everyone else below that, your Ocons, your Strolls, your Gaslys, your Sainzes, your Hulkenbergs, they've all kind of picked up points here and there. It's been very fractious in that midfield. And we know that actually, you know, when there is a top 7 that is so much stronger than the rest of the field, it is really hard to pick up points if you're outside of that. Unless you're Alex Albon, who's been absolutely on fire. So as we've kind of gone through the season, I don't think Jack Doohan has done anything particularly wrong. Okay, he's had a couple of big spins and a couple of crashes that you don't really want, but he's a rookie. And we saw that with Franco Colapinto too in the Williams car last year. You know, he absolutely demolished that Williams car in Brazil, in Las Vegas. There was a good few races where Franco Colapinto, you know, put himself in the books for a new chassis at Williams last year as well. So I don't think that you can kind of take anything of that. It is the behind the scenes, isn't it? Franco Colapinto brings in so much money and just so much Argentinian fan base and backing. And we saw how that made a difference to Williams' season at the end of last year. Like suddenly we saw 4 or 5 more sponsors on the Williams car from sort of the last, or from the Netherlands onwards, because Franco Colapinto came in, was pretty quick, started scoring points, And I think Alpine were like, well, if Williams don't want that money, because to be fair, they've now got the Carlos Sainz money coming in, so Williams don't really need that as much anymore. We'll take him on. They gave him a 3-year contract. Like, that is ridiculous, by the way. Most Formula One drivers on the grid only get 1 to 2 year contracts. Franco Colapinto got a 3-year contract at Alpine, and he wasn't even technically one of their main drivers. He was always going to go into the car. It was always going to happen at some point this season. It was when rather than if, but it is a little bit earlier than we were expecting, and definitely a bit harsh on Jack Doohan. Will Doohan be able to get back into the sport? I think there's never say never. You know, Nico Hulkenberg looked like he was gone and done and dusted, although he did have a lot more experience behind him. You can see rookies kind of dip in and out of the sport sometimes. It's tough when you've got only 7 races under your belt. But I don't think this is the end for Jack Doohan necessarily. And I think he'll be in contention for seats later on in the year if there's any seats that pop up throughout the grid. It's going to be tough, though, because the grid is pretty stacked at the moment, isn't it? And Franco Colapinto technically only has 5 races to do it. I was going to do a video on it, but just didn't get the opportunity to do so. I had a job interview the day that all of that happened with Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto. So I'd love to know your thoughts, though, because it's a weird one, isn't it? I don't know if Franco Colapinto necessarily deserves it, but then he doesn't. He did pretty well for Williams at the same time, and I don't know. It's a difficult one. This is the best season in recent memory. 2021, I think. Well, maybe. Maybe. Thank you for subscribing. Random videos. Appreciate that. We are heading towards 130,000 subscribers. We're about 3 minutes away from the start of qualifying. So I will get a couple of bits loaded up. Not applicable. What do I think about Williams hamster? Sorry? No comment. What do I think of the Imola upgrade? Yeah, we didn't even get into the Imola upgrades. Will it help George and Kimi snag P2 or P1? I think it's going to be really tough. I still think the one thing that we can kind of hope for, well, I'm not hoping for as a McLaren fan, but as a neutral, I think we can hope for, is that a lot of teams have brought their upgrades before McLaren have. So McLaren haven't really brought too much this weekend. McLaren are more aiming at next weekend in Monaco, bringing a few more of their upgrades in particular. So we could see this race, at least those upgrades play into effect for the other teams first and foremost. Then on the other side of things also, it's quite a high-speed track, Imola. Like, there's no real slow-speed corners. And although McLaren have won 5 out of the 6 races so far this year, the races where they've really dominated has been those slow speed tracks. You look at like Miami last time out, the reason that they were by far and away the best car out there, on top of the fact that their tyre degradation is a lot better during the races, is because they also just do dominate those slower speed corners and those slower speed tracks. Imola is not that. So that also plays into the favour of Red Bull, Mercedes, maybe even Ferrari. I didn't even acknowledge your comment. I apologize. There's a few. They come, they go. I will try and get the next one. How much time is left till the start of quality? About 2 minutes now. So we are going to head over. I need your help. And in fact, I'm going to do a little poll. Okay, I want you to vote because I've kind of put a couple of different things together. This here is screen 1. It has the track at the top, as you can see, and then various different bits and pieces, live timings about stuff. So we've got the track limits, we've got the investigations tracker, we've got the driver radios, or screen number 2, slightly bigger in terms of the track on the screen, slightly more driver radio messages that you can see, but less of the general information about sector timings and things like that. So screen 1 or screen 2? You can get your votes in the comments right now. So screen 1, screen 2, screen 1, screen 2, screen 1, screen 2. As the drivers are now making their way out of the garages, at least. Screen 1, so you can see the sector timing. Screen 2, oh dear. We've created a complete divide. It is 52%. 50-50. You clicked and you couldn't see the options yet. Sarah. That is insane. Here's one of 2 options. And you just pick the boxes before they're even opened. I feel like I'm at the opticians. We can swap between the 2, to be fair. I'll stick with this one just because it's the one we're on right now. But I will be probably kind of swapping between the 2 as we go. Just to see, you know, which one's better, which one's worse. Bigger map, bigger thing. But the green light is out. We are going to see some drivers heading out onto the track already. Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoletto, who actually looks pretty quick in free practice too, are out on track already. Just move this slightly. Then Ocon and Behrman deciding to join them. None of the big boys deciding to get out early on this one. Can feel a little bit tight when it comes to the 20 drivers in this first qualifying session. So it wouldn't surprise me if, again, we see a few drivers leave it a little bit too late when it comes to trying to get themselves across the line, because you'll see a lot of drivers try and go quite late, getting themselves out on track. And I think that's why getting that first lap in is going to be very, very... Josh Swain. I think screen 2 would be better for the races, but prefer screen 1 for qualifying. Well, that's kind of why I've done both, to be fair. Oops. And now I've just completely got rid of them all. So we've got kind of both options, because as you say, they're both there. We can switch between the 2. Sector timings are there, I guess, on this one. More so than the other. But I'll flit around. No investigations, no track limits infringements. I'm imagining that track limits infringements is going to tick up fairly quickly. Some very bouncy curbs here in Imola and some really tricky corners. Sort of 11, 12, 13. Hamilton just making his way up towards turn 14 and 15, which have caused him no end of headaches through free practice 1 and free practice 2 yesterday. Was constantly on the radio just sort of discussing how he couldn't really get the Ferrari car to slow down enough. Need to make the radio messages bigger. We can do that. I can write these things down. I don't know if I can zoom in more on the radio messages. Here we are then. We're on board with Lewis Hamilton, actually, just making his way around his first flying lap here in Imola. I think, actually, we're a little bit behind. I'm just going to change this as we get into the first qualifying session. Yeah, there we go. That's much better. Hamilton just making his way around towards turn 11 and 12, finishing up. Gabriel Bortoletto has actually gone quickest of anybody so far. Behrman slots into second, Hulkenberg third, and Ocon fourth. But as I say, I've got my eyes on Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton just making their way around. Lance Stroll goes into second spot. Fernando Alonso, a man that we haven't talked about too much this year, goes to the top of the timing sheet. Still yet to score a point inside of that Aston Martin car, which seems absolutely insane when you consider how dominant he was in 9th place last year, and nobody could get anywhere close to him from the midfield. And in fact, Alonso has the better of Lewis Hamilton for now. Carlos Sainz also slots into 3rd place behind the man who replaced him at Ferrari. Alex Albon is going incredibly quick and does go to the top of the timing sheets. Just looked at that first sector time from Alex Albon and was like, he's onto something here. Purple in the first sector in that Williams car. Charles Leclerc is just coming around towards the final couple of corners in his Ferrari. And Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda have also made their way out onto the track for the Red Bull duo. Antonelli and Russell out as well for the Mercedes team, as some of those guys that went out first, your Bortolettos, Hulkenbergs, Ocons and Behrmans, are making their way into the pits. So everybody going for a slightly different strategy when it comes to this opening qualifying session so far. Charles Leclerc did only manage a 5th fastest time there. Alex Albon still at the top of the timing sheets. Will Max Verstappen be able to knock his old Red Bull teammate off? Verstappen just making his way through turn 2 and turn 3. Keep an eye on his lap times. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda just making his way actually past Oscar Piastri, as the McLarens have decided to follow the Mercedes cars out on track. Verstappen, 2.5 tenths up through the first sector alone. So this is looking like it might be one and done for Max Verstappen. Oh, but there is a yellow flag in the second sector. Oh, it's Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda at turn 6 has completely lost it and gone into the barriers, and that's going to be the end of Yuki Tsunoda's session, and a red flag as well for the first session of qualifying. That is a big, big collision for Yuki Tsunoda there. Keep an eye out. I will let you know once we see a replay of it, but the rear right side of Yuki Tsunoda's car is completely sheared off. The rear right tire hanging on by a thread. The entirety of the rear wing has gone, so he's clearly spun in the gravel, and the front wing has been taken off as well, so he's collided with the barriers at least twice in there as well. Goodness gracious me. Oh, goodness. Remove the penalty. Yeah, I could remove the penalties section actually from this screen, because obviously unlikely to get penalties when it comes to qualifying. Here we are then. We finally get a replay of what happened here for Yuki Tsunoda. Oh, and he just bounces over the... Oh, my goodness. And actually was upside down there for a moment, Yuki Tsunoda. Gets all over... Oh, my goodness. That is a huge crash for Yuki Tsunoda. It's way worse than it first looked. I mean, the car was in pieces, but he also hit the catch fence, I think, inside of that Red Bull car. And no wonder there was so much damage to that car. It basically comes into turn 5, is carrying a lot of speed down in towards turn 5, gets all over the curbs in turn 5, loses the rear end of that Red Bull car. The rear right-hand side of the car collects the barriers first and foremost, actually sends the car up towards the catch fence. And I think luckily it kind of snags on the fence underneath and therefore spins around. The front end of the car then also snaps into the barriers also, which kind of spins Yuki Tsunoda the right way up again. So he was upside down on top of the barriers there at one point. But I think the front end actually catching the barriers spins him back round. And he did end up at least face up in the gravel. That Red Bull car is going to need completely replacing for tomorrow's Grand Prix if Yuki Tsunoda is going to be able to take part. He is going to be starting from the back of the grid, even if he does. And cool. Yeah, actually, that is a lot of damage to the top side of that Red Bull car as well. And the clock has stopped. 12 minutes and 13 seconds left to go. And it looks like Yuki Tsunoda is going to be heading back to the garage and wondering what more he could have possibly got outside of that Red Bull car. So much debris. Yeah, a lot of debris. Luckily, kind of all to one side, so won't take too long for the marshals to clear that up, luckily, because they can just kind of brush it all to one side. I think it's just making sure that the barrier is actually put back together again, just in case anybody else loses it down towards turn 5, because that Tech Pro barrier did take quite a whack from Yuki Tsunoda's Red Bull car. We did only get to see 10 drivers set lap times in the sort of opening 6 minutes of that session there. Alex Albon, the quickest man out on track so far, is 3-3 actually between Albon and Sainz when it comes to the head-to-heads when it comes to their qualifying. So winner will take the lead when it comes to the Williams head-to-heads this year. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda can't catch a break. It does seem that way, doesn't it? Just feels like since moving to Red Bull, the season has gotten a lot more tricky for Yuki Tsunoda. He started really well at RB, didn't it? He probably should have had quite a few more points on the board than he did. RB threw away their strategy in Australia and in China, actually. So easily could have been points for Yuki Tsunoda in both of those Grand Prix. But since moving to Red Bull, it's been almost nightmarish for Yuki Tsunoda. Dropped out in Q1 for the first time. Last time out in Miami, and now out in Q1 once again under very different circumstances. Yuki dead. No, Yuki Tsunoda is fine. He did jump out of the car, which just goes to show how safe these cars are now. That huge shunt, the halo definitely doing some work there for Yuki Tsunoda as his car did flip onto its top and then flipped back around again. So Tsunoda is out of the car. Tsunoda into the medical car and taken back to the Red Bull garage. Hopefully we'll get to catch up with him later, although I imagine he will be sent to the medical center as well, because that shunt will have definitely set off the alarms inside of the car. So he will have to go and see the medical team, but hopefully we do get to hear Yuki Tsunoda's side of things. It just looks like he's gone through turn 4. He's obviously on that straight down towards turn 5. He's carrying the speed through. Turn 5, turn 6 is quite a tricky one. You sort of veer left quite quickly, but turn 5 isn't too bad. And you're still slowing down for turn 6, which is a lot tighter, a right-hand turn. And it just feels like as he's come to turn 5, he's just carrying that little bit too much speed. Also gets a touch too much curb going into turn 5. It just sets the rear end of the Red Bull car loose. The right rear side then just steps out and then collides with the barrier. And as the right-hand side hits the barrier, then sends the whole car tumbling over. And, yeah, not a very nice collision for Yuki Tsunoda whatsoever. Should have stayed put. Poison Chalice in the Red Bull seat. I think you're right. Yeah, I think who can go into that Red Bull seat at this point? They're running out of drivers, aren't they? And nobody seems to be able to do what they want them to be able to do. Sergio Perez did for a couple of years. Like, they went through Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon pretty swiftly after Daniel Ricciardo. And then it felt like, Pierre Gasly kind of did it. Pierre Gasly did enough. Sergio Perez did it. Sergio Perez did enough. 2021, 2022, there was a lot of positivity around Sergio Perez. He was winning races. They were winning championships for the first time. So maybe it's quite easy to look good when you do have by far and away the most dominant car that Formula One has ever seen. Then it just started to take a turn, didn't it? 2023 wasn't quite there. 2024 was pretty appalling. You can understand why Red Bull decided to try and make the switch. But now I think we're just realizing nobody can drive that Red Bull car. Unless your name is Max Verstappen, you're basically guaranteed to just not be able to drive that Red Bull car, and you're just causing yourself more harm going to Red Bull, even though it is a top team and you should, want to test yourself with the best drivers on the grid. You should want to test yourself in the top cars. Unfortunately, that top car, as Sally just said, is most certainly just absolutely poisoned. It is, yeah, it's the curb. Hits the curb in turn 5. Rear end of the car hits the barriers. That sends it flipping over. Then continues to bounce along the barriers. The top end of the car hits as well. So the onboard cameras that kind of sit on the top of the car, they're completely wiped off. And then the front wing also wiped off too. Ooh. And Max Verstappen told on the radio that Yuki Tsunoda has had an incident at turn 5. That then ended his lap. So Max Verstappen was on a flying lap, but unfortunately, that came to a close a little bit sooner than he would have wanted. And Oscar Piastri also just checks in to make sure Yuki Tsunoda is all okay. They can, well, they'd have seen the debris. They'd have seen the wreckage of Yuki Tsunoda's car. And Lawson checking in on Yuki as well. But red flags are still out. Yuki Tsunoda's car has been retrieved. Luckily, Yuki Tsunoda did walk away from that. So we know that he is okay. He's made his way to the medical car and will be in the medical center, I imagine, by now. But the car has been removed. It's just putting that barrier back together again. As I say, the rear end of that Red Bull car did take a big chunk out of that Tech Pro barrier. But it looks like they're getting that put back together again at the moment. And Alex Albon with a 1:16.1 still at the top of the timing sheets. 12 minutes, of course, left to go in the session. So more than enough time for somebody to get their lap time in and put themselves through to the second part of qualifying. As it stands, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Antonelli, Hadjar, Russell, Lawson, Gasly, and Colapinto have yet to have set a lap time. So we will be getting back underway shortly and determining which of these drivers will fall into that bottom 5. There is confirmation. Estimated time to restart is 4:20. So 30 minutes, 3 minutes. Sorry, 3 minutes from now. Race control finally confirming that. Did he flip? Yes, indeed. The car upside down, only momentarily, kind of flipped, then fell back down off of the Tech Pro barrier. And then as it fell off of the Tech Pro barrier, had enough momentum to just also rotate itself back around onto, I was going to say the wheels, but the wheels were not really attached in the way that you'd have expected them to be. So hopefully we will hear from Yuki Tsunoda, but he did walk away from the crash. So as I say, should be okay. Whether that Red Bull car will be fixable for the race tomorrow, it's going to be a long night for the Red Bull mechanics. Let's just say it like that. Got to remove the sausage curbs. Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Franco Colapinto on the radio. Franco Colapinto just going to the line now. A little bit of a miscommunication between him and his brand new race engineer. It's going to be a steep learning curve, it feels like, this weekend for Franco Colapinto. All the other drivers now having 6 races experience with their teams at least. All of the rookies now feel pretty settled in. Franco Colapinto, his first race of this next season in his career. Got 9 races, of course, for Williams. A lot of up and downs for Franco Colapinto, it has to be said. Gained a lot of popularity, but wasn't a perfect 9 races by any means from the Argentine. Enough, though, to convince Alpine that he is the man for them moving forwards alongside Pierre Gasly. The green flag has now been waved, and we're just waiting for the green light at the end of the pit lane as the cars are starting to form a little bit of a queue. And Franco Colapinto actually first in the queue, ready to run. And seemed to have been a little bit of a miscommunication possibly between him and his race engineer. I don't think they wanted to be at the front of this queue. And everybody was sort of creeping into the pit lane, and I think Franco Colapinto went out when technically the Alpine team wanted him to stop just before the line. There we are then. Liam Lawson just making his way out for RB as well. Didn't manage to get his lap done. Had to follow behind Yuki Tsunoda, the man who replaced him at Red Bull. Colapinto, Hulkenberg and Bortoletto out again for the Stake Sauber team. Lawson and Hadjar, though, coming out yet to have set lap times. And this is going to be a bit annoying for the likes of Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Antonelli, and Russell, because they were partway through getting their lap times in. Max Verstappen already the quickest man through the first sector of anybody. And then he has the issue of now having to do it all again, but with even more traffic, because we're going to see 19 cars all making their way out of the pits and onto the racetrack. Must be frustrating for Horner to try and find a second driver that's a bit closer to Max's pace. Who do you put in there? Like, they tried Lawson, didn't happen. They tried Perez, didn't happen. Or they didn't really try Lawson. They gave Lawson 2 races and they weren't happy. They gave Tsunoda a little bit longer, but still not quite what they would have expected from Yuki Tsunoda, considering he's been in Formula 1 for a little while now. Tsunoda debuted in 2021, wasn't it? So there we are. Isaac Hadjar is just starting his flying lap, as I can see on the screen here. Has been very, very positive start to the year for Isaac Hadjar, especially after that shunt right at the beginning of the Australian Grand Prix. Felt like, oh, is this going to be the right move for the RB team? Is Hadjar going to settle in? Actually, I think outside of Kimi Antonelli, you could argue that Isaac Hadjar has had the best start to the season of the rookies so far. So I even was arguing before last weekend, or before the Miami Grand Prix weekend, that I think Isaac Hadjar had maybe even had a better start to the year than Kimi Antonelli. And then, of course, Kimi Antonelli goes and gets a pole position to his name, and I can't really have that. So I think Isaac Hadjar slots for me into second place for the rookies so far this year. But we are back underway in Q1. We are just without Yuki Tsunoda. So Tsunoda will drop eventually to 20th spot in that list, as everybody else is going to get their lap times in. Isaac Hadjar, the man I was just talking about, jumps up to 3rd spot in his RB car Ollie Behrman having a pretty tough first sector and trying to battle through. Behrman actually really seems to be struggling through the traffic there, but now ahead of Colapinto, so should be able to do a little bit more. Colapinto going very slowly indeed. Charles Leclerc almost stuck to the back of the Williams car. And Charles Leclerc overtaking Franco Colapinto. So Colapinto hopefully lining up for a flying lap or possibly coming back in. Oh no, coming back in 5th place in that Alpine as it stands. Lewis Hamilton on an outlap. But we are still waiting for quite a few drivers to put some lap times in before we get a full picture of where we are for this session. Carlos Sainz has been the first driver into the 1:15s. Make that Pierre Gasly as the Frenchman joins him. 0.05 of a second quicker than the Spaniard. Lance Stroll also tries his best to get in and amongst it, but slots into 4th place for now. Max Verstappen has once again gone quickest of anybody in the first sector. Fernando Alonso wants to get amongst it with the rest of the midfield pack. He goes up to the top of the timesheets for now. Antonelli can only manage 3rd fastest in his Mercedes car. George Russell is the next man to be coming around the final corner. George Russell eyeing the top spot, can only go 2nd fastest. Splits Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly. Max Verstappen, though, looks pretty electric right now and does absolutely demolishes Fernando Alonso's time. A 1:15.1 from Max Verstappen. Fastest in the first sector and the final sector. And the Dutchman certainly seems to have found his form once again when it's come to qualifying. He just seems to be able to turn it on a Saturday afternoon, does Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton comes across the line, 9th fastest for Ferrari. Leclerc and Hamilton falling down the order, and you wouldn't say completely safe with those lap times. Lando Norris, 7.5 tenths off Max Verstappen's time. Only 5th fastest. Is also behind Pierre Gasly there, Lando Norris. Here comes Oscar Piastri, better than his teammate, but still 3.5 tenths off Verstappen. Verstappen really finding the grip and the pace that nobody else seems to be able to at this moment in time. Franco Colapinto is under investigation for that incident in the pit lane. It's going to be investigated after the session, though. So I think that's going to be probably a fine, I would imagine, for Franco Colapinto. It'd be harsh if they gave him any kind of grid penalty. I don't think he really gained a massive advantage by coming into the pit lane before the team meant for him to. It is the 2 Stakes Sauber cars and the 2 Hasses that find themselves in the bottom 5 alongside Yuki Tsunoda. Of course, Tsunoda is out of the session for those of you joining us now. So he is going to be 20th. It's just the other 4 drivers that are going to fall into that bottom 5. Oh, and actually, Lando Norris finding the gravel. Well, the grass, I guess, at turn 15. Oh, no, sorry, turn 13 that was for Lando Norris. Finding a little bit of the grass. Charles Leclerc is the one who lost it at turn 15. The rear end of the Ferrari car just stepping out a touch. Lance Stroll. Ooh. Did Lance Stroll go entirely off the racetrack there? I think that'll be looked at as to whether that's a track limits violation for Lance Stroll, but we'll have to wait and see. First runs complete then for all 19 drivers that are still in there. And you're looking at sort of, I'd argue maybe Carlos Sainz down as drivers that will want to improve their laps. Maybe it's a bit harsh. Maybe Lewis Hamilton down as drivers that will really need to improve their lap times, because Hulkenberg, Bortoletto, Behrman, Ocon, I'd back them to be able to find at least a few tenths more, considering where they were in the free practice sessions earlier on today. And the fact that it is so tight when it comes to these Grand Prix and these qualifying sessions that we've had so far this year. Kimi Antonelli almost bumps into the back of the Stake Sauber car. That could have been a little bit of a tricky one. Gabriel Bortoletto, 0.3 off, making his way into Q2. Certainly can find that as he's just coming around the final corner now. It's Gabriel Bortoletto to start another flying lap for Stake Sauber. Nico Hulkenberg, his teammate, is also coming around the final sector, so keep an eye on those green Stake Sauber cars, whether they can get themselves out of that bottom 5. The two other cars in there, Ocon and Behrman. Ocon just making his way towards turn 15 now on your screens, and Behrman down towards turn 12. What happened to Yuki? Big crash at turn 5, turn 6 for Yuki Tsunoda and his Red Bull, so he is out of the session. And that car is going to need some big repairs before tomorrow. Bortoletto has improved through the first sector. In fact, he's a 10th up on Nico Hulkenberg through the first sector is Gabriel Bortoletto. Bortoletto, another 10th in the second sector. He's doing pretty well so far. Investigation pit lane incident involving Nico Hulkenberg. An unsafe release is being investigated for the other Stake Sauber, who is also a 10th and a half up on Liam Lawson's time right now. So it does look like those Stake Sauber cars are going to improve. It's just how much they will. Bortoletto can only get himself up into 15th. It was the final sector, and Hulkenberg has also made a mistake in the final sector. So it's looking like it might be done and dusted for the two Stake Sauber cars, as both of them had pretty dismal final sectors there, a 25.8 and a 26.3 from Bortoletto and Hulkenberg respectively. So Lawson, although he has dropped down to 16th for now, I'd say that's done. Both of the Stake Sauber cars are going to be out. Just looking at where Esteban Ocon is. Ocon has improved in the first and second sectors, but a lot of traffic, and there's a yellow flag, and it's Franco Colapinto who has come to a stop. What's happened there? Oh, and it's a huge shunt for Franco Colapinto. A very heavy crash indeed, and the second heavy crash of the session for Franco Colapinto. And it's down through turn 3 into turn 4, I think, for Franco Colapinto, just looking at the track map. And that's going to be all that they wrote. So Liam Lawson can feel pretty hard done by there. He was on a flying lap, was improving, and is going to be out in Q1. Ollie Behrman, the beneficiary, he jumps up into 10th place and got himself safe. Franco Colapinto would have just been through as well as it stood. He would have been 15th fastest, but that red flag bringing an end to this first qualifying session, and also bringing an end to Franco Colapinto's first qualifying at Alpine. Doesn't look like as big a shunt as Yuki Tsunoda's. The front end of that Alpine car sustaining quite a big chunk of damage, but I think it sort of bounced off the barriers and just spun around in the gravel. Lewis Hamilton can also see himself as a little bit lucky there. Qualifies 13th in that first qualifying session. Franco Colapinto, yes, is okay. He is all right. He is up and out of the car by the looks of things. But Colapinto did technically make it through. A little bit of a weird one. Here we go. Here's the replay of the Franco Colapinto incident. Comes through turn 1 and turn 2. Fairly clean. Oh, and it's actually on the exit of turn 2. Oh, sorry, the exit turn 3. Gets onto the gravel. Just the left-hand side of the car. Yeah, just... So out of turn 3, he's just gone a little bit wide. Gets onto the dirty, grassy part of the exit of turn 3. Dips his tyres. And as soon as you dip your tyres in there, the rear end again spins around. He's locked the brakes to try and slow the car down, but it's nowhere near enough. And into the Armco barrier on the right-hand side of the track at turn 4. And that's, again, another barrier that they're going to need to replace. Second big shunt in Imola qualifying. Yuki Tsunoda the first with 12 minutes left on the clock. And Franco Colapinto as the checkered flag dropped. So Lance Stroll fourth. Yeah, Aston Martin seemingly turning up a little bit here today. Oh, Ollie Behrman's lap time was deleted by those things. I think he didn't get across the line before the red flag technically dropped. So Behrman, that is devastating for Ollie Behrman. He was right up in there into 10th spot, I think, before that lap time then snatched away from him because the red flag technically dropped before Ollie Behrman finished that lap. So Behrman, Ocon, Hulkenberg, and Lawson. Oh, I feel really bad for Lawson because he's dropped out there, although he was on a lap and improving. But it just goes to show you need to get that first lap in, doesn't it? You know, although you call it a banker lap, and you know you can improve your second time around, your banker lap is sometimes the thing that you have to rely on. And ouch. Track limits violations, yet one for Nico Hulkenberg for that final corner. I mean, he was out anyway because he didn't improve on his time because he went off on the final couple of corners. It was on the exit of turn 17 that Nico Hulkenberg went wide. And Oscar Piastri didn't actually catch where that was on the track where he went wide. Track limits violation on lap 7. There you go, at turn 15. Turn 15, Oscar Piastri. Maybe just going a little bit too deep. Turn 15, though, that would have been into the gravel for Oscar Piastri. So that would have been a bumpy ride for the Australian, who currently leads the World Championship. What happened to Franco? Big sort of, I guess it was a bit of understeer through turn 3. Just went very wide on the exit of turn 3. Got onto the sort of dusty, not quite the gravel, but it's sort of dusty, grassy exit of turn 3 on the left-hand side of the track. He then lost control of the rear end of the car. That then spins out because it's in the dust and debris that is out there. You can see he tried to slow the car down as much as possible. The brakes were completely and utterly locked, but couldn't stop the car from veering into the barriers over on the right-hand side of the track at turn 4. So that's how much speed he was kind of carrying. And straight into the barriers, head-on collision with the barriers on the outside of turn 4. And again, another car that is going to need a big repair job before tomorrow. Not quite as bad as Yuki Tsunoda's. Tsunoda's was the front, the rear, the top, all sides. Whereas Franco Colapinto, just the front end of that Alpine car. Oh, and of course, Franco Colapinto under investigation for that release as well. Crasher Pinto is indeed back once again. He did have some shunts at Williams. I did say this at the beginning of the, you rewind it when we were talking about Alpine before qualifying started. I did say it's a bit of a risk. Although he was very quick at Williams, he did put a car in the barriers and completely destroy it in Brazil. He did the same in Vegas. It was quite a few times where Franco found himself finding the edges of the track. And he's done it once again. Oof. And that Alpine, huge shunt into the barriers. There's, I think, Sky being a little bit cheeky there, showing Jack Doohan walking through the Imola paddock. I don't think that's, a live shot of Jack Doohan by any means, but I think you know what they're getting at. Colapinto out now in qualifying 2. Did technically make it through, although I don't think he would have with that lap time. There was a few drivers behind who were improving. Lawson was going quicker. Behrman was going quicker. Well, actually, we saw Behrman did go a lot quicker, but then that lap time taken away from him because of the red flag. Ocon was also on a lap, so it was Tsunoda who's the biggest loser, I guess, but Colapinto, I think, unlikely to start from 15th place. I think there's going to be some penalties there for Franco Colapinto to replace some of those damaged parts inside of his Alpine. And we are just waiting for Q2 to be decided upon. Has been delayed momentarily. Oh, Charles Leclerc is under investigation. Failing to follow the race director's instructions in terms of the maximum delta time is Charles Leclerc. Oscar Piastri, similar. Q1 incident involving car 16 and Piastri. So both of them following the race director's instructions. So Piastri and Leclerc both under investigation now as well. And Ollie Behrman still in the car. I think hoping that they will give him that lap time at Haas. The race directors have now said that we will start at 4:46 local time, so about 5 minutes time from now. If you are new to the channel, maybe hit that subscribe button. That'd be absolutely amazing. Hit the like button as well if you're enjoying the live stream. Just gonna, I don't know which I prefer. Ollie Behrman still inside the car. Still no confirmation as of whether they're going to give Ollie Behrman that lap time. He would have seen that on the dashboard he was way up on his previous time. Ollie Behrman, it did get, classified, at least for a moment, because Ollie Behrman did jump up to 10th place on the timing sheets. But did he finish that lap before the red flag was shown? That's the thing that they'll be looking at. And Ollie Behrman will argue, well, on my steering wheel, on my delta in front of me, it didn't say red flag until I'd already crossed the start-finish line. So Haas will be on the phone to the stewards, I'd imagine, as we speak. And Liam Lawson there. Frustrated, I think, is the word to say. I think Lawson lost 2 of his 3 laps, really. He lost a lap because of the Yuki Tsunoda shunt, and then he also lost a second lap because of the Franco Colapinto shunt. So Lawson can feel pretty hard done by there. But as I say, you've got to get the lap in when you get it. He did get 1 lap. That lap wasn't quite good enough. Okay, Gabriel Bortoleto got a couple more, and Hulkenberg got a couple more laps and things like that around him. But it's just really annoying, I guess, if you're Liam Lawson, because neither time or both times he was about to set a flying lap, there was a red flag shown in front of him. The real question has to be, that crash was not arranged for Gasly to go on to Q2. Let's not speculate yet. Gasly was fine, wasn't he? Where's Gasly? P7. Yeah, Gasly was absolutely fine. It's sort of, it was kind of Charles Leclerc, Albon, Hamilton down. The start of Q2 is going to be delayed again. So just getting confirmation it's being delayed once more. I think because they're still trying to put that Tech Pro barrier back together again, to be honest. Looks like that Tech Pro barrier took quite the shunt. Stage 1 of Crash Kick 2.0. This is all Alpine are going to get, aren't they? Alpine is going to now have an entire season where literally any positive, and that's what I mean. Why would you let Flavio Briatore back in? Ooh. Yeah. I think it does look like the red lights are already... Ooh, actually. Ollie Behrman. Ah, yeah, there you are. There's the red lights being shown. It is point of a second that Ollie Behrman has missed out on getting into Q2 there, because, yeah, the red flag is shown just before he gets across the start-finish line. So Ollie Behrman, very unlucky, and Gabriel Bortoleto will thank the stewards for being pretty quick on the button there, as Bortoleto makes it through to Q2, and Ollie Behrman drops out into 19th place. So, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that, lads. Seeing a few subscribers drop in there. Sad to see that Ferrari dropped Carlos not anymore. Yeah, Ferrari and Williams are finding themselves in a bit of a midfield battle, aren't they? So, over the last couple of Grand Prix weekends, the Williams outscoring the Ferraris. Oh, no, would they have done? Well, Albon finishing ahead of the Ferraris last time out. Ollie Behrman is still in the car. Still in the car is Ollie Behrman. And the lap time for Ollie Behrman is now under review. It looked like from the onboards, the red lights were already kind of on. But whether that was, I couldn't really see. I need to see the onboard again from Ollie Behrman's lap. But they're going to be discussing that. This could be the last race at Imola, according to rumours. Could be dropped. Yeah, it's one of those races that's definitely in the mix. That's sort of in discussions as to whether it will keep its place on the calendar or not. You've got to remember, it did only come back fairly recently because it was sort of in and around COVID times where Imola joined the calendar once again. 2 red flags in Q1. Yeah, 2 big shunts as well. Really heavy shunts in different areas of the track, though. It's not like one corner catching the drivers out. Franco Colapinto being caught out, just coming through turn 3. Got his the left-hand side of the car just dipped into the dusty part of the track and left in the barriers. And then Yuki Tsunoda was down towards turn 5. He was more just bobbling over the curbs, was Yuki Tsunoda. Just got way too much of the curb on the entrance to turn 5. And again, just the rear end of the car leaving him and colliding with the barriers around the edge of turn 6 was Yuki Tsunoda. Both of them out. Tsunoda down in 20th place. Colapinto will be 15th once we get going once more. So we'll only see 14 cars taking part in this second qualifying session. So we're looking for the bottom 4 to drop out of qualifying once more. Unless Ollie Bearman is through. Gabriel Bortoleto is still in the car as well, obviously. Yeah. Trying to wait for any kind of confirmation on the Bearman versus Bortoleto debate that we've currently got going on. Bortoleto will think of himself as through. He set the 15th fastest lap time when he thought the red flag dropped. Ollie Bearman thought he set, well, the 10th fastest lap time, but at least enough to get himself through into Q2 when the red flag dropped for him. So they will both be reviewing it. I'm sure Gabriel Bortoleto and Ollie Bearman's team members are going to be all over the radio to the stewards right now. Hello, Dead Short. How's it going? And I appreciate Peter and Vulcan subscribing to the channel. We're getting ever closer to that 130,000 subscriber mark. Triple header. Maybe we can nab it inside of this triple header that we've got coming up. Of course, we got back-to-back-to-back Imola, Monaco, and Spain, leading up to the Spanish Grand Prix changes, of course, to the front wings that we're going to see. Will that be the turning point of the season? Seeing it, well, at least for now, Max Verstappen, the quickest car today. Oscar Piastri, a close second. Lando Norris down in 6th. Our championship contenders, you would argue. Although I'm sure George Russell would still like to be considered in and amongst that. Still waiting for this lap time, which Ollie Bearman has set. It's under review. All of the drivers here just must be so frustrated. You're in that mindset. You're ready to go. Your, adrenaline is up as you're setting your qualifying lap times. And yet you now have to just sit in the garage and wait and wait. We were told initially that we were going to be underway 5 minutes ago with Q2. So another 5 minutes has expired since 46. We're now at 3:51 or 4:51 local time. And both of those drivers, neither of them know which one is actually going to be taking part in this Q2 session. Bortoleto and Bearman, both in their first full seasons in Formula One. Bortoleto, of course, the Formula 2 champion of last year. Ollie Bearman, the super sub at Ferrari and Haas, scored points in 2 of his 3 races last year. Once for Ferrari in Saudi Arabia, again in Azerbaijan for Haas that time. And it was a pretty tough weekend in Brazil, but I think it was a tough weekend for almost everybody in Brazil, really, considering the weather that we got in Brazil last year. But both of them into Formula One for their first full seasons. Now waiting to see which of them will get to qualify in Imola once again. Bortoleto currently sitting 15th on our drivers' standings at the moment. But Ollie Bearman arguing that he got across the start-finish line before the red flag was officially shown after that collision with the barriers from Franco Colapinto. Which do I think would be the most fitting track to return to the calendar? That is a good question mark. This might be quite controversial. I actually quite like the French Grand Prix. I know it's not the most exciting, I think, because, you don't have any kind of jeopardy. The runoff areas are huge. So you don't really see too many, well, like we've just seen with Sonoda and Colapinto. It's the complete opposite of Imola in that you don't really often see huge shunts with the barriers in France because there's enough runoff area for you to kind of be fairly safe at most places. But I do quite like the French Grand Prix. Obviously, Zandvoort also looking like it's going to drop off the calendar as well. So whether that could kind of come back on. I feel like if you're going to get rid of Imola and Zandvoort, 2 European Grand Prix, I'd like to see them either replaced with, again, European Grand Prix. Because I think we've got a nice spread at this point in terms of the calendar. I know it's still quite European centric and there's still more European races than anything else, but we do have 3 in the US and Canada and Mexico. So you can kind of see that as North American Grand Prix. We have 5. Maybe you could argue that we should have a few more South American Grand Prix alongside Brazil. Maybe you'd, chuck in a. It'd be tricky though. Where would you go? An Argentinian Grand Prix, but that's only because of Franco Colapinto. So maybe you could argue that there should be maybe another South American Grand Prix. I don't think we need any more Asian Grand Prix. Well, I suppose Middle Eastern and Asian you can kind of split into 2. You got kind of China and Japan, maybe in India or something. But then you've got Singapore, which is kind of down there too. And then you've got more of your Qatars, Bahrain's, Abu Dhabi's. They're kind of a bit more clustered together. I don't think we need any more of those. Saudi Arabia in there as well. Maybe like somewhere a bit weird. Maybe like the Turkish Grand Prix could come back. That would be quite interesting. Or the Malaysian Grand Prix. That would be a good one. I like the Malaysian track. There's a lot of tracks I'd quite like to see back. But then I'm greedy. If it was me, we'd have, 40 Grand Prix a year. Because I just like watching Grand Prix. But I appreciate for everyone involved in Formula One and everyone else who's working for these teams, they probably don't want any more Grand Prix than they've currently got. So it's kind of that back and forth of how many is a good amount to have. Drop Vegas and get India back. I think 3 Grand Prix in the US does kind of make sense. The US is basically Europe. If you look at the sizes of the two, the fact that we've got 8 or 9 races in Europe and then 3 in the US, I think is fine. I think that's fair. As long as there's the market for it, I can understand it. And I know that's quite controversial to say because nobody really likes the fact that we have lots of American Grand Prix now because they're all very new. Cuban Grand Prix. Is there a Grand Prix, an A-list Grand Prix track in Cuba? If there is, sure. Is it A-list or grade 1? It's something like that. You have to be a certain level of track to host a Formula One race before you even then start to think about actually hosting one. But I can't remember if it's called a grade A track or a grade 1 track, and now that's annoying me. Is what it is. A good track. You need a good track. Yeah. Oh my goodness. They've sent Bortoletto down to the... I think Stake Sauber gambling on the fact that they're going to get through. So Q2 will start at 16:58 is what we've been told by the race directors. Grade 1, is it? Thank you. Grade 1. I couldn't... For some reason, grade 1 and grade A were like... in the grand scheme of things, basically the same. But Nürburgring, maybe. Maybe the Nordschleife. Max Verstappen was very quick around there. DRS enabled. Q2 has started. We're just waiting for the green flag at the end of the pit lane. And it is Gabriel Bortoletto who's going to be the first man out there. So Ollie Behrman seems to have been given the no-go, unfortunately. So even though Ollie Behrman was ready and raring to go, he stayed in the car that whole time. And it was under review for a moment. It feels like they have decided that Gabriel Bortoletto is going to be allowed into Q2 and Ollie Behrman is going to be denied the opportunity to take part and improve on a 19th place in qualifying. Gabriel Bortoletto is out, the green flag is waved, and we are underway for Q2. And the Haas team have now finally given up, and Ollie Behrman is now unclipping himself inside of that Haas car, and that has got to be the most frustrating thing for Ollie Behrman. He literally had crossed the start-finish line milliseconds. It must have been after that red flag had dropped. If the race director pushed the button and said red flag, then I guess that is it, isn't it? But so annoying if you are Ollie Behrman or an Ollie Behrman fan. And Ollie Behrman is out of the car and making his way down the pit lane. Here come the Q2 cars then. We are finally getting underway. And an hour after Q1 started, we have started Q2. It was a very long Q1 session. It's two big red flag shunts. One 6 minutes in from Yuki Tsunoda and one right at the end from Franco Colapinto. And Gabriel Bortoleto is now starting off the flying laps here for Q2 at Imola. Max Verstappen is out on track as well. Stroll and Alonso after a very solid showing in Q1 are now coming around turn 12 and 13. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton making their way out too. Isaac Hadjar just about got himself through, sneaked over the line just before the red flag. Did Isaac Hadjar manage to get his RB car up into Q2. Kimi Antonelli also making his way out. He'll have a lot to celebrate at the moment. Of course, that first pole position in Miami, he'll be chomping at the bit for more. And Bologna winning the Italian Cup as well. His home team brought up just a few miles away from the Imola track. This is his real home Grand Prix of the season, Kimi Antonelli. George Russell, his teammate, just behind, keeping an eye on Max Verstappen's first sector time with a 24 dead from Verstappen. Gabriel Bortoleto is going to set the first full lap time at a 1:16.6. Doesn't feel like that's going to get you through into Q3. Max Verstappen, though, in the hunt for another pole position this year. Only the one victory to his name in Japan, but in qualifying, he has been absolutely electric, it has to be said. Just seems to be able to find the lap time on a Saturday, despite how happy he is with the car on a Friday. Never seems to be that happy. Charles Leclerc has also just gone quickest of anybody in the first sector. So maybe Charles Leclerc is going to be entering the conversation for lap times here. Max Verstappen with a 1:15.4. That's more like the lap times we're expecting to see that will get you through into Q3. Charles Leclerc slower than Verstappen through the second sector, but only by a couple of tenths of a second. He made that up in the first sector. Gonna see if he can just about get there. He's not quite going to be Max Verstappen's lap time, but maybe he'll jump into second place. Does indeed. Couple of attempts off in the end from Charles Leclerc. He was only 4 thousandths of a second, actually, quicker than Max Verstappen in the first sector to go purple. And Lewis Hamilton then comes across the line to go third fastest for Ferrari. Alonso and Stroll fourth and fifth at the moment. Bortoleto the slowest at the moment too. Isaac Hadjar then jumps up into fourth spot for the RB team. Are we going to see another Isaac Hadjar Q3 appearance? Hadjar again, the second quickest Red Bull car, as Tsunoda and Lawson both dropped out in Q1. Just saying, they've tried Tsunoda. It doesn't feel like it's going very well. They gave Lawson a chance at the start of the season. Maybe Isaac is the true heir to Red Bull's second seat. Have to wait and see. George Russell comes across the line to go second fastest in the Mercedes car. He's gone quickest of anybody through the first sector, but Lando Norris decides to turn up to the game. Didn't seem 100% comfortable in the first qualifying session, but has now gone a tenth and a half quicker than Max Verstappen to go top of the timing sheets in his McLaren car. His teammate, though, Oscar Piastri, the current World Championship leader. 4 race wins in a row for Oscar Piastri. Could make it 5, which would equal Ayrton Senna's record at McLaren. And what a track to do it at, of course. Imola, where Ayrton Senna's career unfortunately came to a close And Oscar Piastri is going to get to the top of the timing sheets for now. 1:15.2 from Oscar Piastri. And Ayrton Senna, seen as one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever. Most Formula One drivers on the grid talk about how Ayrton Senna was the reason that they fell in love with the sport. Oscar Piastri has the chance to equal that record at McLaren this weekend, and at the moment looks set to be doing that. Top of the timing sheets at the moment. Colapinto got the second Williams seat now. No, Michael. He has got the second Alpine seat. But unfortunately, Colapinto, big shunt in Q1 means that Colapinto is out of this session, even though he will technically qualify 15th because of his lap time that he put in just before he then caused the red flag at the end of the last qualifying session. Everybody has had an opportunity to go around the Imola circuit once more for this second qualifying session. 8 minutes still to go. So still a lot to play yet, but Lance Stroll, Gasly, Albon and Bortoleto, the 4 drivers that are currently in the bottom 5, along with Colapinto, who will not be setting a lap time after he crashed out in Q1. Looking at it, Hadjar, Alonso, Sainz, I think those 3 could be the 3 that get through. Albon would be the one there out of that bottom 4 that I'm looking at the moment, who surely would be looking to improve a bit more on that. Lance Stroll is pretty quick in Q1, but would I gamble on Lance Stroll making it through to Q3? Probably not. So I'm looking at Alex Albon there in 13th place, and I'm thinking that's the driver I'm really expecting to jump up in the standings when they get back out on track for their second qualifying lap. Kimi Antonelli, the driver, under pressure then in 10th spot. His teammate, Carlos Sainz, in 9th place. So if Albon does go quicker, will he knock out Carlos Sainz? As I mentioned before, it is 3-3 when it comes to the head-to-heads with the Williams drivers so far this year. Albon dominating the races, though. 30 points to his name so far this season. But Carlos Sainz seemed to really click with the car last time out in Miami. Let's see then. Charles Leclerc inside the Ferrari cockpit, analysing his lap, which sent him 5th fastest, but 3.5 tenths off of the pace. Piastri and Norris on their own little planet, a 2.5 quicker than Max Verstappen. Sorry, not a 2.5, a 10.5 quicker than Max Verstappen. Oh, Pierre Gasly gets all over the curbs at turn 14. That's where he lost time in his Alpine car. So maybe some time also to find inside of that Alpine for Gasly. And actually, and Gasly frustrated with one of the Aston Martin drivers. Didn't actually see which of the Aston Martin drivers it was. Neither did Gasly. But one of them getting in the way of him as he was making his way past turn 14, 15. Gasly then being prepared to go back out once again. The tyre blankets are removed from that Alpine car. 5 minutes on the clock. Oh, and another bait of new subs subscribing to the channel. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button. Hitting towards 130,000 subscribers. And if you are enjoying the stream, it would be massively great if you could hit the like button. I lost my words there for a moment. We'll forget about it. Hit the like button. Max Verstappen then. A 10.5 off Oscar Piastri's time. Still 3rd fastest, and feels like that will be more than good enough to get himself through into the final qualifying session here at Imola. Stroll, Gasly, Albon and Bortoleto, the men that need to improve. Bortoleto feels like a long stretch for him to get into Q3, considering maybe wouldn't have even really been in Q2 had it not been for that red flag from Franco Colapinto. Had that red flag dropped literally a second after it did, it would have been Ollie Behrman and not Bortoletto. So it's the other three I've got an eye on. Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon. Come on then, boys. What have you got? Can you get yourself in the mix with the top 10 and get yourself through to a final qualifying session with the likes of Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Russell, who look all set to be pretty much guaranteed their spot in the final qualifying session? Hadjar, Alonso, and Sainz, the three drivers from the midfield pack that are in there at the moment. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda, the glaring omission from the top 10 in a top 4 seat, you would argue. Here we are then, Isaac Hadjar just coming out for RB. 7th fastest, best of the rest so far. And looking to be, well, is guaranteed to be the 2nd fastest Red Bull powered car once again, Isaac Hadjar. All I'm saying. Antonelli there in 10th place. Looking at the rookie drivers. Gabriel Bortoletto still in there technically, but it is Lawson, Behrman, Colapinto all out. Just trying to see Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris staying in the garage. Confirmed then. Max Verstappen has decided to come out once again. I think they are guaranteed to be through. I can understand why Russell would want to come out. Charles Leclerc maybe too, but Antonelli is the man I've got a little bit of an eye on. He's under pressure in 10th place, especially because I do think Stroll, Gasly and Albon all have the ability to be able to improve their lap times. Antonelli through the first sector is a 10th of a second off Oscar Piastri's lap time, but has improved on his own first sector from his previous lap. So has Lewis Hamilton as he comes through the first sector. Antonelli, though, needs to get through, doesn't he? His home Grand Prix in front of the Italian fans. He's brought his teachers and classmates here this weekend from the school that he went to, just a few miles away from this circuit. Antonelli improves once again through the second sector and is going to improve on his lap time. Just needs to be enough to get him through. Isaac Hadjar has just gone 4th fastest of anybody as he's improved his lap time to go ahead of the Ferraris and George Russell for now. Here comes Kimi Antonelli round the final corner. It's only 8th fastest for Kimi Antonelli. Still 5/10 off Oscar Piastri's lap time. Lewis Hamilton, though, does not improve. Stays 7th fastest. Let's keep an eye on that one. Here comes Charles Leclerc. Also stays where he is. 6th fastest for Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz is absolutely flown through the first sector. Is the fastest first sector of anybody from Carlos Sainz. In fact, he's only 0.02 of a second off Oscar Piastri's time through the middle sector as well. Carlos Sainz's Williams car has decided to turn up to the battle. Gabriel Bortoletto has got himself up to 12th, but he's going to be out of qualifying then, so that is guaranteed for the Brazilian. Let's keep an eye on Carlos Sainz, though, has decided that his absolute rocket ship of a Williams is going to go to the top of the standings. Take a bow, Carlos Sainz. I know that the two McLaren cars aren't out on track, but goodness me. Albon also moves up into 7th spot. That's now put Kimi Antonelli right on the bubble. And I am worried now because Pierre Gasly is improving. So is Lance Stroll. I think this is going to be it for Kimi Antonelli in his Mercedes car. Gabriel Bortoleto is out, but Gasly, Stroll, and Alonso are all improving on their lap times. Here comes Gasly, goes sixth fastest. Antonelli is out. Is Lewis Hamilton going to be joining them in the bottom five? So that is Bortoleto and Antonelli guaranteed to be out. Here comes Lance Stroll to take the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton out of qualifying, and Fernando Alonso could make it a double Ferrari drop. Here he comes. He does. It's Leclerc and Hamilton both out. Hamilton and Leclerc both drop out, as well as Kimi Antonelli. We have 6 midfield cars in the top 10. That is insane. That is absolutely ridiculous. Carlos Sainz, quickest of anybody. Both of the Williams cars through, both of the Aston Martin cars through, an Alpine and an RB all in the top 10. This is mental. Both of the Ferraris out, a Mercedes car is out, a Red Bull is out. That is a ridiculous second qualifying session. What an end to the weekend for Ferrari in front of the Italian fans as well. It has gone from bad to disaster to absolutely throw this year in the bin for Ferrari. My goodness me. Everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And if you're Italian or if you're a Ferrari fan, all I can do is apologize, because this year, we talked about it at the top of the show, felt like it should be Ferrari's year. And now they come into the first Italian Grand Prix of the season, 7 races into the season, and they are being outdone by midfield teams that are Williams, that are Aston Martin, an RB of Isaac Hadjar. Goodness me. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's all I can say about that. That is just that. I don't want to be in the team meeting that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton are going to find themselves in a few moments' time. Adrian Newey kicking at Aston. He's not even working on this year's car. Adrian Newey is already focused on 2026. This is just Aston Martin actually getting an upgrade on the car, and it being an upgrade for the first time in what feels like centuries. Every single upgrade that they have brought over the last 2 seasons has made the car slower. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso has the opportunity to actually get himself some points. No points for Fernando Alonso so far this year. He's up there, 6th place for now, and has the opportunity to fight for pole position. Why not? Carlos Sainz is up there. It's anybody's game. We've got 12 minutes of Q3 still to come. And I don't want to predict who's going to be the top spot. Of course, it'd be silly not to say at least one of the McLarens and maybe Verstappen on the front row of the grid. But if it is going to be Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso, why not? It's all chaos in Imola this afternoon. But maybe the longest qualifying session. We've already been going for an hour and 17 minutes since Q1 started. We still have Q3 to come. Goodness me. But the big point there, Charles Leclerc will start tomorrow's Imola Grand Prix in 11th place. Lewis Hamilton beside him in 12th. Kimi Antonelli, his first home Grand Prix as a Mercedes driver, and the Grand Prix that will mean more to him. Of course, I know we have another Italian Grand Prix later on in the year, but this one really was the one Antonelli will see as his home Grand Prix. He drops out in 13th place. Gabriel Bortoleto can see himself as fairly lucky to be starting in 14th, to be honest. Franco Colapinto, I doubt will actually start from 15th place. I feel like that red flag, the crash that he had down towards turn 4, or through turn 3 and out of turn 4, I think will mean that he does have to start possibly even from the pit lane and take some new parts inside of that Alpine car. Lawson, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman and Tsunoda were the 5 drivers to fall out of Q1. There is a yellow flag that has just been waved at turn 5, so I'll keep a little eye on that. Oh, and Charles Leclerc just gets way too wide out of turn 15. He's going to be... Just fell away from them, you know? They just... It was only a 10th or so. Hamilton, another 10th back, but it's so tight. 0.3 of a second separating first from 10th, separating Sainz from Albon in first and 10th place, both in a Williams car. And it's just how close it is around this Imola circuit this weekend. It just goes to show how competitive the midfield really is in Formula One. Even if you're one of the big boys, if you don't turn up on the weekend, they are there to take it away from you. Why is there a yellow flag? I think there might be some gravel or something on the track. It's now gone away. Didn't seem to be anything big. There was no cars or anything out on track. They just maybe had a marshal run out there. Oof. And Verstappen, again, all over the curbs at turn 14 and 15. Pierre Gasly, knowing that he'd done enough to get himself through, very happy with his lap indeed, and he should be. Got himself through up into Q3, 8th place for Pierre Gasly, drops both of the Ferraris out. And Imola qualifying has indeed absolute cinema. Could not agree more. We have seen everything. We've had huge shunts in Q1, double red flags causing dramatic ends to the first qualifying session, whether or not it was going to be Bortoletto or Behrman that made their way through into Q2. Then Q2 got underway. It was tight. It was tense. Everybody was trying to get that last car across the line. The Ferraris let it slip. Antonelli, disappointing. And now we have 6 midfield cars making up the top 10. Of the kind of established top 10, we only have 2 McLarens in Piastri and Norris, Russell and Verstappen. Russell missing his teammate, Verstappen missing his teammate, and neither of the Ferraris quick enough to get through. So I reckon Antonelli just got distracted with his peers there. Maybe. I think it's harsh to say that, to be honest. I think there was a little bit more pressure on him this weekend, most certainly. I don't know necessarily with his peers there, but more so his first home Grand Prix, especially because he'd got that pole position last time out in Miami, so there would have been a little bit more eyes on him. You know, you do something like that. It's that thing, isn't it? You win your first Grand Prix or you get your first pole position and the eyes and the pressure just a little bit more on you. Maybe he's just succumbed to that a touch. I didn't get to see the onboard. I was looking at the 2 Ferrari onboards where they made their mistakes because they were the ones closer to it. Antonelli ended up being actually quite a distance off Alex Albon's 10th place time. But here we are then. Q3 is underway, and it is a real mix of cars that we don't often get to see at this point in the afternoon on a Saturday. Both of the McLarens, George Russell and Max Verstappen, they're your sort of stalwarts. Hadjar has been in quite a few Q3 sessions this season, it has to be said. Alonso also, maybe a name that we're used to seeing in Q3, but not this year so far. The Aston Martin looking much better than it has for the first 6 races of this campaign. Sainz and Albon putting their Williams cars in there once more. And thank you for subscribing, Danny, to the channel as we get underway with the final qualifying session of the day. Here we come then. It is going to be Lance Stroll to set the standard in this final part of qualifying. Fernando Alonso's out on track behind him as well. Isaac Hadjar is going to be 3rd across the line. Then come the McLarens, Norris ahead of Piastri, just making their way through the 2nd sector. Verstappen has just come out of the pits down towards turn 2 as we look at it on the track. George Russell is also now making his way down towards turn 2. Let's see. I wouldn't want to say because we know we can see red flags here. We know we can see sessions end abruptly. So even though you'd say most of these drivers are going to get at least a couple of chunks at it. The first lap could be the one that is decisive. So the pressure is on straight away. Stroll and Alonso have started their flying laps as Albon and Sainz are the final drivers to come out of the pit lane. Here comes Isaac Hadjar across the start-finish line. All right, let's keep an eye on Lando Norris as he started his first flying lap of this final qualifying session, because he surely should be the man that we're actually thinking about when it comes to pole position. But you know what, Carlos Sainz, maybe it's going to be you. Here comes Oscar Piastri as well. Let's keep an eye on the back-to-back of the two McLaren lap times. Lando Norris just coming towards the end of his first sector. 23.9 from Lando Norris through that first sector, and it is purple from anybody so far. Although you'd expect that, as it is only the Aston Martins and Hadjar that have done it so far. Here comes Oscar Piastri. Let's compare that first sector. He's a couple attempts up. Is Oscar Piastri a 10th and a half up? Is Oscar Piastri through the first sector? So first sector goes to Oscar Piastri at the moment. Lando Norris comes through the middle sector with a 49.8. Again, quickest in the middle sector of anybody. Max Verstappen has just gone quickest of the three drivers in the first sector by a 10th of a second to Piastri. So now the cards are in Max Verstappen's hands. Piastri has gone quicker than Norris through the second sector. So Norris is looking the slowest of the three that we feel like will be in contention for pole position. It's a 114.9 from Lando Norris at the moment, but Piastri quicker in the first and second sectors than his teammate. Max Verstappen is actually a little slower than Oscar Piastri in the second sector. Piastri comes across the line. It's a 10th and a half up on his teammate. It's a 14.8 from Piastri, but here comes Verstappen. It is not over yet. The three drivers in contention for it. Verstappen was quickest in the first sector of anybody. Can he match that with a solid third sector? Yes, just about 0.05 of a second. Max Verstappen takes top spot. So Verstappen is quickest so far by 0.05 of a second from Piastri, and then Lando Norris is actually a couple attempts adrift from Max Verstappen's lap time. George Russell comes across the line, fourth fastest as we would expect. Isaac Hadjar is currently the best of the rest so far. Here come the Williamses though. Albon and Sainz both competing for who is going to out-qualify the other. As I've mentioned a couple of times, it's 3-3 between the two Williams cars in qualifying, so this will mean a lot between the two of them. Gasly has come across the line. It's 0.4 of a second off Fernando Alonso's lap time from Pierre Gasly, so not great from the Frenchman. Alex Albon has only gone 8th fastest of anybody, and here comes Carlos Sainz to round it up. He goes 8th fastest and displaces his teammate, but is 0.4 of a second, or 3.5 of a second quicker than his teammate. So Carlos Sainz slots into 8th, and that is the first run of all 10 cars. It is very tight at the top, though. Verstappen takes provisional pole position from Oscar Piastri by 0.05 of a second. Lando Norris, then another 10th and a half off his teammate. George Russell, not completely out of it, but nearly 0.3 of a second adrift of Verstappen. That would be a lot of time to make up. And then you see that gap in quality. Like, we expect those cars to be towards the top end of the grid for a reason. It is another 0.7 of a second down to Isaac Hadjar in 5th place. But Hadjar, best of the rest at the moment, and best of the rest being 5th place would be incredible for Isaac Hadjar tomorrow if he came away with a 5th place finish and the points that he would gain in the championship from that. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. Stroll on 14 points so far this season. Lance Stroll has been very good so far this season, it has to be said. Fernando Alonso is looking for his first points of the year. If he starts in 7th place, he would be very happy to see those points come towards him. Carlos Sainz versus Alex Albon in 8th and 9th place right now. And Pierre Gasly currently 10th fastest from the 10 drivers still in it. Of course, we did lose Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Antonelli, Bortoleto and Colapinto in Q2 after both of the Ferraris made mistakes on their final qualifying laps. And then we lost Liam Lawson, Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, frustratingly, Ollie Behrman and Yuki Tsunoda in Q1. So we have 4.5 minutes left to play out here then. And 4.5 minutes for somebody to try and sneak pole position from Max Verstappen. He did manage it last year, you remember? It was the turning point of the season. We got to see that Verstappen versus Norris battle here last year in Imola. But Verstappen did come out on top in Miami. Lando Norris won the race last year. It was Oscar Piastri this year. And Oscar Piastri in the hunt for his 5th race win. Can he do it? 5th race win of the season for Oscar Piastri would be insane at this point. We put him so far ahead in terms of the Drivers' Championship. But we are just looking for qualifying at the moment. The points aren't delivered on a Saturday. They're delivered on a Sunday. Anything could happen tomorrow. And the positions could still change this afternoon. 3.5 minutes left on the clock. The tyre blankets are coming off. And Oscar Piastri actually getting out there pretty early. Oscar Piastri ahead of Lando Norris. So Piastri is going to be out in front of his teammate. Here comes George Russell from the Mercedes garage as well. And I'll give you the running order as they come out of the pit lane for the drivers as they try and complete their final qualifying session. Although Lando Norris came out right behind Oscar Piastri, as they've made their way down the pit straight, it seems that actually they have been separated by quite a few cars. Piastri is going to come out first of anybody. Lance Stroll is then going to be second across the start-finish line. Alex Albon third. So Piastri deciding that he wants to try and get out there early. And he's going to be right at the front of the pack. Oscar Piastri, he's disappeared into the distance, to be fair, from Lance Stroll and Alex Albon. I think Isaac Hadjar also managed to sneak between Piastri and Norris. Yeah, he has. Isaac Hadjar is going to come out just in 4th place. So Piastri, Stroll, Albon, Hadjar is the running order at the moment. Lando Norris is then behind Isaac Hadjar. And Max Verstappen is then behind there. And Verstappen has kind of come to a complete stop in the pit lane, just waiting for Hadjar and Norris to disappear in front of them. Hadjar actually left quite a big gap between himself and Albon. Verstappen leaving a slightly smaller gap between himself and Lando Norris ahead. George Russell just coming down the pit lane as well with the 2 Williams cars and Fernando Alonso. Alonso next out. And it's going to be very close indeed, actually, with 1 minute and 30 seconds left to go. Alonso and Russell are actually sort of fighting down towards turn 2. Gasly and Sainz the same. So although they have left themselves a bit of time, they're going to have a bit of a weird track position battle for themselves to have. Oscar Piastri deciding not to get involved in any of that. And Piastri now starting his final flying lap of the session. Needs to find 0.05 of a second at least if he's going to get himself pole position here in Imola. Max Verstappen, the man to beat. Unfortunately, he is down by 0.6 of a second to Max Verstappen. He has improved on his first sector, but he is 0.06 of a second down on Verstappen's first sector time. Verstappen still quickest of anybody through that first sector. Piastri is going down towards the second sector. Piastri carrying that speed through turn 12 and 13, up the hill towards turn 14. It can all go wrong here. He's done very well indeed. Piastri a 10th up on Max Verstappen's time and purple through the middle part of the lap. So Piastri looking like he is going to improve. A much better middle sector from Piastri. Piastri just dealing with a little bit of traffic, though, because he's come out first of anybody. He's got to make his way past Gasly and Sainz. Gasly is going to come across the line, and Piastri has gone to the top of the time and sheets by a 10th. But that final sector was compromised because of the traffic. Gasly and Sainz have been able to make their way across the start-finish line. Just about, so we are going to see laps from everybody. Lance Stroll and George Russell come across the line. George Russell still 4th. Stroll does go up into 5th place ahead of Hadjar. Here comes Alex Albon then across the line. He goes up into 5th ahead of Stroll and Hadjar as well. Lando Norris has had a pretty poor middle sector and hasn't gone overly quick in the first sector either. Verstappen has improved on his first sector time. For Verstappen with a 23.4 through the first sector. Verstappen, though, a little bit down on Piastri's time through the middle sector. I don't think Lando Norris is going to be able to get across the line and improve. Doesn't. He stays third fastest, does Lando Norris. So that's going to be a second row start for him by the looks of things. Verstappen was slow through the middle sector in the Red Bull. Needs a very fine third sector if he's going to get there. Not quite from Verstappen, just 0.03 of a second shy of Piastri. But Piastri is going to start on pole position once again. Carlos Sainz just coming around the final couple of corners to round out this qualifying session. And he goes 6th fastest in his Williams ahead of his teammate. Fernando Alonso, though, was the man who was best of the rest. And George Russell. Oh, Russell came across the line last. And Russell actually slots his Mercedes into third spot. I didn't realize that Russell had slowed down so much on his starting lap. So Russell actually jumps up into third spot. And Lando Norris drops down to 4th. Was that a track limits thing? Or was that just a very good lap from George Russell? Piastri, top of the timing sheets once again then, and Piastri takes another pole position. Verstappen, agonizingly close. Verstappen, 0.03 of a second off. And then George Russell is going to start ahead of Lando Norris, 3rd and 4th. Fernando Alonso starts in 5th place tomorrow. Carlos Sainz, a double Spaniard, 3rd row of the grid, in 6th place. Alex Albon is going to start in 7th alongside Lance Stroll. Isaac Hadjar and Pierre Gasly will both start inside the points for RB and Alpine, respectively. Both of the Ferraris will start outside of the points. Leclerc and Hamilton, 11th and 12th place. Kimi Antonelli on his home Grand Prix will start in 14th. Gabriel Bortoletto in 15th spot. Colapinto is provisionally in for 15th place, but depending on the damage to his Alpine car, he might end up slotting in further down the grid or possibly even starting from the pit lane, depending on the damage to that Alpine. Lawson at the moment is 16th fastest. Hulkenberg 17th fastest. Ocon and Behrman side by side. Well, not quite side by side. 18th and 19th, so they'll start one ahead of the other in 18th and 19th place. And Yuki Tsunoda, again, depending on the damage to that Red Bull, provisionally starts at the back of the pack anyway, but might also end up starting from the pit lane tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff as you are leaving. And we will be back once again tomorrow for the Grand Prix in Imola. I think that top 4... anything could happen there. And then we've got 6 midfield cars behind, 2 Ferraris that are going to be chasing the pack like crazy. It is going to be very entertaining indeed. Make sure that you don't miss it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as I said, thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow.